I wrote a book for all those people who didn't know what to say or what to do, because honestly, I was one of them. It took me until the age of 40, when my husband was first diagnosed with cancer, to understand what was an okay thing to say and what was the thing that not to say. How are you the best, most helpful, and how not to be helpful? And to be honest, I was one of those people who thought I was being really helpful, but wasn't.
Welcome to GMP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, aka the Going North Podcast, where authors from around the world help you realize that success is tangible. You'll leave with at least one new piece of inspiration or information to help you keep going north. Now let's get on with the show. Today's episode is sponsored by both books, Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself, and the follow-up bestseller, Stay the Course, The Elite Performer's 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. Head over to Amazon.com, pick up both books. They are available in a trifecta of paperback, audio, and ebook. Cop all three of both and be on the lookout for another book from yours truly to help podcasters succeed. Now let's get on with today's episode. And today on the highlight reel builder for authors known as GMP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, we got another super special, awesome human for you today. That's right, indeed, courtesy of the wonderful podmatch.com, where podcast guests get to connect with podcast hosts. And if they're cool, they're freaking in. And today's guest is freaking in indeed. That's right, indeed, because she is an experienced people leader, y'all. That's right, the EPL, y'all. That's right, indeed. As well as a speaker and author, indeed, who has decided to join the business of immortality. So let's give it up for the kind and heavenly Kim Hamer. How you doing today, Kim?
I'm good, Dom. Great to be here.
Oh, yeah, that's right, indeed. It's great to have you here with all the R's. It's great. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So my goodness. So since it's your first time on the podcast, usually try to get the backstory of every guest that pops on for the folks listening around the globe, wherever they are, whether it's the car or the house or doing dishes or whatever. So mind filling us in on any cavities I may have missed about you?
Sure. So I always start my story. I usually start my story with this one. I was in the doctor's office with my husband, and we were in there with a doctor, and he was not talking to us. He was looking at some test results on the computer. He had some printouts that he was looking at, and he was taking notes. And finally, he lifted his head and he said, "Okay, here's the chemo regimen I want to go with." And he started to outline this regiment. And then he stopped mid-regiment and said, "Oh, and by the way, you're not going to be able to work during this. It's going to be very difficult, and you're probably going to need 6 to 7 months." And at that point, I stopped listening, because he wasn't talking to me. He was talking to my husband. And we did not have 6 to 7 months of income in our account to be able to stand through this treatment. A couple of days later, I was listening to my husband talking to his boss, and he was in the study, and his voice just sounded really odd. So I got up from the sofa, I walked into the study, and as I walked in, my husband hung up the phone, and I said, What did he say?" And he just didn't look good. Like, his eyes were really big. And then he finally answered and said, "Tom said that they're going to cover my salary for as long as I have treatment." And we both stood there shocked. So that was the beginning stages of my journey as a cancer caregiver. And my husband actually got cancer twice, so he beat it the first time. And, when people hear about beating cancer, they always think, "You've got a new lease on life. Aren't you excited?" And our experience, and the experience of many people who I've spoken to since, has not been this sort of new lease on life. It's been sort of like shock. And there were many, many nights my husband and I would lie in bed together, and we'd look at each other and go, "Oh my God, what just happened?" Right? Like, what just happened to us? Like, oh my gosh. And there's also a lot of side effects from chemo that last past the clean, past the clean scans. And then, cancer takes a toll on a marriage as well as any relationship. So it brings out the best in our relationship, or brought out the best in our relationship, and it also brought out the worst. So we spent the next year, really, after he was cancer free, kind of rebuilding our lives, working back together as a family. We were very much co-parents. Then, unfortunately, the cancer came back, and within 4 months after the second diagnosis, he died. At the time, he was 44, and our kids were 12, 9, and 7. And this would be normally sort of the end of the story. But when he was sick and after he died, both times after when he was sick, I noticed that some people really knew exactly what to do and what to say, and so many more didn't have a clue. And so a couple years after that, I actually sat down and wrote a book, and it's called 100 Acts of Love, A Girlfriend's Guide to Loving Your Friend Through Cancer and Loss, available on Amazon. And I wrote a book for all those people who didn't know what to say or what to do, because honestly, I was one of them. It took me until the age of 40, when my husband was first diagnosed with cancer, to understand what was an okay thing to say and what was the thing that not to say. How are you the best, most helpful, and how not to be helpful? And to be honest, I was one of those people who thought I was being really helpful, but wasn't. And so I wanted to give people the opportunity to show up for their friend dealing with this kind of cancer or loss, or really kind of any health crisis, because it made such a huge difference in my life, in the life of my kids, and the life of my husband. The book is called 100 Acts of Love because that's what it felt like every single time someone showed up and did something for us. So it was like, here's a lasagna, here's an act of love. We're going to pick the kids up on Friday afternoon, and you're not going to see them again until Saturday morning. That's an act of love. We want to take the kids at Disneyland. That's an act of love. We're going to fill your car with gas. That's an act of love. We're going to, so we're going to come across the country and we're going to hire a handyman to fix that darn light in the kid's bedroom. That's an act of love. And all those little acts of love really helped. Like they set the foundation for my walking through the hardest moments of my life, which was, being a young widow. So that is sort of, let me just one last thing. And then I went back into work, into the HR field, which is what I had been previous in. Wasn't in the HR field when my husband was sick both times. I went back into work, and I thought that all companies did for their employees what my husband's company did for him. Right? Parents and people showed up to bring. My husband was worked in a private school. Parents showed up with food. There was, lots of support. Parents gave him rides. Like, people just showed up and helped, and it was just absolutely amazing. So when I went back into HR, I landed in a position working for a president whose wife had cancer. And then the wife died. And I thought, okay, well, the company will start to do things. And the company didn't know what to do. The CEO didn't know what to do. The employees didn't know what to do. And I ended up sort of guiding them and saying, okay, no, we're not going to bring a platter of vegetables or a platter of, cold cuts, because trust me, everyone else is bringing food. There's only 2 of them. They don't need food. What they need is this, right? Or when he came back to work and he was extremely short-tempered, and people would be like, I didn't do anything. I was like, this is grief. You're witnessing grief right now. This is what grief looks like in the workplace. Or when 3 months down the line, where they were like, he should be over this. Why isn't he doing better? Right? I had to explain that to the company. And that's when my idea to help managers understand what to say and how to support employees and their teams in organizations, as well as be productive, came to me, because I realized so many managers, when there's a cancer diagnosis or a death, there's this sense of, I can't say anything. They're going through this really difficult time, so I can't ask them to get that report due. And what I do is I help managers understand how to navigate those kind of difficult conversations, but how to set it up in their organization so they can ask the employee to do work that they've all agreed on that needs to get done. And they can also help the team support the employee when they're going through a difficult time, because everybody wants to help, but no one knows what to do. So that is the end of my story for the moment.
That's right, D, because it's continuing to be told, indeed. That's right, D. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. It's like you're the wonderful bad girl with all these wonderful tools and your utility belt built with this special skill set that is probably needed now more than ever because so sorry for the loss of your husband and just the story
Thank
of
you.
that even being built in with your HR experience right after going through that situation and probably still dealing with touches of it from day to day, just helping that organization with what they're going through. Because you're so right, like with the grief, especially now where we probably need it more than ever, is like a lot of folks don't know what the heck to do. They're like, oh, they just need their time to be alone or whatever. Like, do I
Yep.
like do I like give them a hug? Like, do I give them a high five, be a normal usual self? Like, do I just avoid them? Like, what the heck do I bring it down? It's like black
You
and
nailed
white.
it, Dom. You nailed it. That's exactly what people think. They're like, ooh, They don't really know what to say or do. And it's such a shame because what I often tell people is they are uniquely qualified to help that one person in a way that's very unique and that they need it. Like, so each of us has our own relationships with our coworkers or with our friends. And that makes us really uniquely qualified to help them in one certain way that they really need. And that help can show up in many, many different ways. You know, it doesn't have to be bringing a meal, which I absolutely tell people just don't do. Just don't do unless you know that they're not getting meals because it's the first go-to that everyone does. And it's the, and honestly, who doesn't like to eat when they're in distress? Everyone likes to eat when they're in distress. But if you're talking about cancer and if you're talking about cancer and chemo, which don't always go together, right? Sometimes it's cancer and just operations, and sometimes it's cancer and radiation, and sometimes it's cancer and immunology, immunotherapy. So it's not always cancer and chemo. But if you are taking chemo, depending on the type of chemo, it changes your taste buds and it ruins your stomach. So that really amazing dish that they love, the garlic chicken, they may be like, oh, can't do garlic, like it burns their stomach. So I often tell people, don't do meals, let everyone else take care of the meals. You help in a very unique and special way.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Your own special way. Indeed. That's right. Indeed. You're so darn right. I came long enough. Remember when my dad passed. A lot of folks from my church were bringing food, and even though mom got mad at me for the moment afterwards, just like, hey, I told like, hey, we only got like one fridge in the house here. We
Exactly.
can't keep half the food. Give it to somebody else. Save for the soup kitchen.
Exactly. Yes, 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 absolutely. Well, I'm really sorry to hear about your dad. How long ago was that?
Wow, it was 5.5 years ago at the time of this
Okay.
recording. Yeah, so
Yeah.
2017. Long
Yeah.
battle with dementia. So yeah,
Oh, so he was gone before he was gone.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. That's a whole different and so here's the thing. And let's do you mind if we use you as an example?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I teach managers a five-step process and it can be used it can be used in a business, but it can also be used in a personal. So the first thing I have, and I sometimes play with the reverse. So I'm going to say the first thing you want to do is deal with the feel, right? So Dom's out there, you're a friend of his. He tells you, "Hey, man, my dad's got dementia," and you're like, "Oh man." Like, how bad is it? You're asking these questions, you feel really bad. But your first job is you can say something right then and there, like, I'm so sorry. Right. But your first job is to deal with the deal with the feelings that come up for you about Dom's dad's dementia. We have some stereotypical ideas of what dementia means. And from what I understand about dementia, it means it's a huge range, right? It's everything from they have no short-term memory, and so they're asking you over and over again, to they have no long-term memory, to they have a little bit of both, to it kind of slips away, right? So there's a huge range of this. So really be clear on the fact that you don't know. There's a lot you don't know. All right. Unless you've gone through this, then you can have a conversation with Dom about here's my experience. But you want to make sure you take the time to talk about, to think about your own stereotypes around whatever this person is going through, whether it's loss, whether it's cancer, whether it's dementia. And you also want to go ahead and get sad. Right. A lot of times when we don't acknowledge the feelings that we have about someone's situation, they leak out of us. And the best way I can describe that is you're at work and you have a bad day and you come home and those innocent bystanders, your kids, your partner, your dog, the cat, your neighbor, they get the brunt of it because you haven't excised those feelings. You haven't gotten it out on paper or recorded it or done whatever you can do. And so if you don't get out the feelings that you have about the person's cancer, about Dom's dad, about the fear of your own parent having dementia, then it leaks out of you in a way that doesn't make Dom feel good. And that's really why we want to offer help, right? We want to help someone feel better. So that's step number one, is make sure you deal with the feel. Step number two is say something. And Dom, I don't know if you have people who are like, didn't say anything, like you knew that they knew because someone told them and they didn't say anything to you, whether it was after your dad died or before, right? So that's the biggest mistake that people make. And they don't usually do it viciously. They do it because they are afraid of saying the wrong thing. They're afraid they're going to cause pain. They're afraid they're going to embarrass themselves and say the wrong thing, right? So the fear gets in the way. And when you let fear get in the way, it kind of messes everything up. Because here's the thing I remember. People said, well, sometimes people would talk to me about my husband and I would start to cry. And they would say, I didn't mean to make you cry. Like I didn't want to talk to you about him because I was afraid. I was afraid you would remember. And I'm like, I live with his loss every single day. Like, it's not that you're reminding me that he's gone, So it's really taking the time to acknowledge where the person is. So a great thing to say is, I'm so sorry. Like you said it to me, I'm really sorry about your husband's death. Like that's a perfect thing to say. It doesn't feel very good. It feels like we want to do so much more. And that's because we care about the person who we're talking to. But it's a great thing to say. And you can even say, I don't know what to say, which is perfect. I mean, Dom, if you had told me that your dad had dementia, I would be like, I don't even know what to say, right? It's so shocking to your heart that statement is so beautiful and perfect in so many ways. And you just kind of say, I don't know what to say, and then you let it sit. Now, one of the least helpful things you can say is, if you need anything, let me know. I knew you were going to love that one, Dom. I knew it. There is not a person who I have met who has been through a difficult time who looks at that statement and wants to kill people after they've said it. At first, it feels really helpful, right? Because you're like, oh my gosh, all these people, they're so willing to help. If you need anything, let me know. If you need anything, let me know. But there are 3 specific reasons it is not helpful. Actually, 4. 1, it doesn't acknowledge what is happening. It goes immediately into action, right? So instead of acknowledging, like, Dom, man, your dad, oh, that's really hard, right? Instead of acknowledging, it goes into, let me take an action right now for you. Let me do something. And when your coworker or your friend or your colleague tells you that they have this horrible thing is happening to them, stay present and don't go into action. The second reason it's not helpful is, y'all, what is anything? Like, come on. It's a big, huge word, right? I had a toddler. Does anything mean that you were going to go up to preschool and pick up my vomiting son at the time? Or did anything mean that you'd be happy to drop off a gallon of milk or maybe a bottle of wine? Did anything mean for you that I would come and sit and read to your dad because he loved to hear stories, or play music to him that reminded him of his childhood? Or did anything meant that you'd like, just kind of like, check in, right? What is anything? It's too big a word. And so at the moment it feels like, and you mean it, the moment you mean anything, but y'all, I have friends who weren't going to take their brand new detailed cars up to pick my vomiting preschooler up. They weren't. And so it's really not helpful that way. The third reason that statement is not helpful is because you are now asking the person who is under a great amount of duress to break apart their day and to find one single thing. Dom, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
Oh God, I didn't have breakfast. I said
Okay.
coffee.
My point exactly. When we try to kind of break apart our day, It's like, I brushed my teeth. I know I did because I make a habit of that. I made my bed because I make a habit of that. But what did I do for meetings? Like you have to kind of recall things and you can't recall. So now you're asking someone to break apart their day and to find one thing that you might be able to do. And the last reason it's really not helpful is I don't know about y'all. Every time I give this talk, I say, how many of you are really good at offering help? 99% of the people raise their hand. And then I say, keep your hand up if you're really good. Offering help. And then I say, keep your hand up if you're really good at asking for help. And 98.5% of those people put their arms down. Y'all, it's hard to ask for help. We are not good at it. We don't practice that in this country. We believe in self-will, self-governance. You do it yourself. You can do it. Some people treat it like handouts, but asking for help is what makes the community a community. It makes the connection. But it's really hard to do because they are risking rejection. This is what they're risking. They're risking like, hey, Dom, go ahead and ask me to get you a gallon of milk. Go ahead. Seriously.
Hey, oh, can you give me a gallon of milk?
I'm going to like, oh gosh, Dom, do you need it like right now? Or can I go later? I mean, I'm not going by the grocery store today. Maybe I can get it for you 2 days, right? So that's a rejection. Like they're, who in their right mind, when they're feeling extremely vulnerable, out of their mind, crazy with this fear of whatever's going on in their life, is going to ask someone to do something for them and risk hearing that, right? And risk hearing, no, I can't do it right now. Nobody. So that's why it's not a great suggestion, a great question, a great statement to make. But great statements to make are very specific. So I might say, hey, Dom, does your dad like music? And you'd be like, yeah, he grew up in the 50s and he loves like the chubby checkers or whatever, right? And I'd say, hey, I've got this recording. Can I like come and play it for him? Or maybe I sing and can I come sing for him? And you'd be like, that's a really odd offer. Let me think about it. But then you'd remember, and in 6 months into your dad's dementia, when it gets really bad, and you notice that he responds to music from his era, you're gonna be like, hey, Kim, can you come sing to my dad? Like that would be really helpful. So be specific when you offer help. We all have helping superpowers. I cannot bring you food. I'm not a good person to bring food. I get nervous when I think about preparing a meal. It's not me, but I'm a hell of a grocery shopper, right? Maybe you're not a good mechanic, but you know the best mechanics in the city and you can take their car to get fixed. Maybe you're not a great babysitter, but you know some really good babysitters, or maybe you are a great babysitter, but you want to offer some specific support. Maybe at work, you're like, you just know how to run a meeting, or you're a great agenda person, or you're a great project manager, and you want to offer those skills to that person. So be specific when you offer help, even if it sounds odd, because the thing is, when you offer help that's specific, the person is more likely to remember it. And if you offer more than once, they are definitely going to remember it, which means when they need the help, they're going to call you and ask, because you have offered more than once and it's very specific. And they know, hey, I would say, I can go grocery shopping for you, once a week for the next 4 weeks. Just let me know. And then maybe it takes them a week to respond. And so they respond and I say, I can still go grocery shopping for you starting right now, once a week for 4 weeks, right? So it's very specific. And that specificity gives them comfort, because y'all, no one wants to feel obligated when you're receiving help. There's this thing called, and then I'm going to stop talking because I could talk on this all day long. There's this thing called the law of reciprocity. And the law of reciprocity means if I give to you, you need to give something back to me of equal or greater value. And we all live by it. It's, when someone says hi, you can't walk by them and ignore them. You have to say hi back, right? So that's a simple example of the law of reciprocity. So when someone's receiving, they think that they're on the beginning end of law of reciprocity. But what they don't, and what you have to remind them is they're on the other end of law of reciprocity. You are giving to them because of what they've already given to you. Maybe they're the person who makes you laugh the most at work and it's just a joy. Maybe they offer really good coffee conversations that you have with them every morning. Maybe you really enjoy the Zoom meeting that you have with them. Whatever it is, they're giving back to you because of what you've given to them. So as long as you can remind that person of that value that they've already given to you, it'll make it easier for them to receive. So I know I've only handled 2 of the 5 things, but I did want to take a break because y'all, I could talk about this. We could be on here for 4 hours and I could keep going.
It wouldn't be so bad. The longest podcast interview before editing was at least 72 hours. So you're making good time. You're making good time. We'll just have you as the episodes for all of 2023. That's all.
There you go. There you go. Exactly. Part 2024.
There you go. That's right, indeed. That's right. Podcast record, most guest appearances on one show. At least this one. But hey, it's a great topic though, and it's a good subject to cover, especially now. And you're so right. Like if I could do anything for you, line like that line, like it's so darn true. Heck, I remember my pastor even quoting the story multiple times as he's preached so many funerals, is that, hey, if asking somebody, hey, letting folks know, like, hey, if there's anything I could do, let you know. And then the story was apparently the person says, hey, bring my loved one back to life. And it's like, wow.
That's a good one. Yep. Yeah.
Some
people get really fed up with that question and they come up with these, painful answers. It's like, here's what you can do. You can bring them back. Another thing that I don't like saying, I don't know if you heard this, which was, well, there's a couple of versions of it. He's in a better place, or at least he's not in pain. And I always say, my husband's better place was here with his children. So do not tell me he's in a better place. God needed another angel, not on my watch. God did not need another angel. He could have waited. God could have waited. And then another thing never to say is don't start a sentence with at least. And we do it because we want to bring comfort to the person who's in pain by minimizing what they're going through, right? And not minimizing it in a bad way. We just kind of want them to kind of remember, hey, there's some, good shiny stuff that happens because of this. And the reality is it's not your job to point that out. It's my job to see the silver lining in my husband's death. It is not your job to point out that at least I'm young and I can get remarried. It's not your job. It's not your job to say, well, at least you were there with your father when he died. That's not anyone else's job. It's your job when you get to the place, Dom, to say, wow, I'm really grateful that I was there when he passed, right? I feel at least I was there when he passed. That you can say. It's the job of the person who's going through the difficulty to kind of decide when the at least statement is made. It is not the other person's position or job to say that. And we do it because we're uncomfortable with the feelings that are going on, and we're uncomfortable with death or dementia or cancer or any of those things. But again, your discomfort is not a reason to misspeak and to hurt someone else by accident.
Yeah, that's right indeed. Kim's got them gems for you, y'all. That's right, them good one-liners a day. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. So my goodness, so with all the work that you do, how's it been for these past couple of years with the help that you offer organizations? Because I'm sure they've been going with grief in multiple ways. Like they've probably lost friends, family, colleagues, and heck, even just being short staff on top of that. It's like you got this 2-ton anvil on your back and you got these 500-pound leg weights on each leg.
Yes,
trying
exactly.
To
and you're trying to carry everything forward, trying to make that revenue. That is a great analogy, Dom. I really like that. A 500-pound anvil, 500-pound weights and the anvil on your back. So actually I just launched this business. So this is new as of 2022. And it is, it's been very interesting. I think the challenge has been many managers don't really know what they're missing because they think it's all okay. So we make, so managers who have a high level of emotional intelligence, managers who understand the importance of employee engagement. So those are the managers who I talk to, who reach out to me. many managers are like, it's just cancer. It's no big deal. We'll replace him when whatever, there's nothing for you to talk about. My team seems fine. I heard that a lot. My team seems fine. And then I say, have you asked them?
Seems
And
fine.
it seems fine. Exactly. So those are the managers who sometimes have a hard time embracing what I bring. And I think, what I bring, it's nothing new or exciting. It's packaged a little differently, but it's basic management 101 is really what we're talking about, right? It's really understanding how you're feeling. It's knowing what to say to your employees based on who they are and your relationship with them. It's doing an assessment. It's always understanding, okay, what do we need? What do we not need? Right? Who's got what and who's in charge of what, when, where, and how. And then it's taking thoughtful action. So it's really understanding, okay, if this person is out or they're going to be part-time, how are we going to cover it? How are we going to have the conversation with that person, a work plan, communication plans, and then it's revisiting. So it's not, what I talk about is nothing new. It's basically management 101. But we talk about it in the sphere of, cancer. We talk about in the sphere of well-being, because that's really what we're talking about here. We're not talking about you need this because of cancer. You need this because well-being is one of the top things that employees are really suffering with right now, lack of well-being. And well-being isn't about putting a darn yoga class, in every Tuesday at work. It is about taking care of your people every single day. And this is just another way to do it.
That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Can't rely on pigeon poses to save your organization, right?
Save your organization. Say yo. So yo. Save your organization. Soyo. I don't know how to pronounce that.
They're like, oh, sure, there's a karate stance thing coming. No, exactly. She's going to karate chop your lack of emotional intelligence, baby. That's right.
No, I'm not going to karate chop anybody because that would be mean and that would not be helpful. But I will gently show them how to hold their hands so they can support their employees and focus on their team goals at the same time. There'll be no karate chopping, but I get what you're saying. I get where you're going with that.
Yeah, going north indeed. Don't worry, it's all metaphors. So my goodness, 100 acts of love indeed. So my goodness, so how's the process like with putting the book together and coming up with the 100 acts? Because I'm pretty sure you probably could have 300 and made it full Sparta.
And you're right. You're right. So the interesting thing about this book is I wrote it in 17 minutes a day. And I wrote it that way because, there's a saying that we aren't afraid, when we're talking about really going for our goals, we're not afraid of not reaching our goals. We're afraid of what happens when we do reach our goals. And I was in so much fear and was so positive that this book was not a good idea that, let me say this. I was positive in my heart of hearts that this book was really needed, but I had to get past all the negative self-talk. And I could only get past the self-talk for 17 minutes. So after about 17 minutes, it was like, this is so stupid. No one's done this. If this were a good idea, other people would have written it. You're the only book out there right now that's doing that. This is it's not thick enough. It's not funny enough. This is old fashioned. I just had these massive negative voices talking to me all the time when I was writing. And so I managed it by setting a timer and promising myself that I would just keep writing until the end of the time, until the timer went off. And that's exactly what I did.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. And heck, at first for this podcast, like usually, right, ask all this about the process. It's like 17 minutes a day. It's like, wow, that's freaking amazing. It's like, oh, she go for 30 minutes or hey, go for 500 words. Like, nah, she's like, nah, 17 minutes.
No, I needed, yeah. And I couldn't do 20 minutes because I didn't like the even numbers, like the clock numbers, 15, 20, 25, 30. They didn't feel, I needed something weird. So that's why I picked 17. Something weird and something prime. So that's why I picked 17. Could have been 27. I don't know, but 17 worked.
There you go. Prime choice material. That's right. Prime numbers. That's right. All the prime.
Yep.
That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So, my goodness, since you've been on a few interviews promoting the good, solid work you're doing to help folks have the metaphorical giant hearts and sharing them with others, is there a question that you wish you'd be asked more often when you're on these podcasts?
Oh, Dom, that's a good question. Wow. I've never been asked that. I wish that people would ask. Well, the answer is courage. So I don't really know how to state that. I think what people feel is when they feel scared of doing and saying something, they don't realize that it requires courage. So maybe the question is, what's the single most important attribute for showing up and helping somebody you care about dealing with cancer, loss, or dementia or whatever? And I would answer that with courage, right? And courage isn't bombarding into the room like Superman, I'm here, here I come to save the day. There's an underdog, I think that was, right? So it's not that. It is being, I often heard courage is fear that said a prayer. So courage doesn't come. Courage is when your heart is racing and you're terrified of saying the wrong thing and you say it anyway. That's courage. So courage isn't knowing exactly what to do and what to say and how to show up. Courage is coming into the person and saying, I want to support you and I have no idea how to do it, but just please know I'll figure something out. I love you. I care about you. I'm so sorry this is happening to you, right? Just uttering those words takes courage. So that is what I wish more people would ask. What's the single most important attribute needed to support an employee, a coworker, a colleague, a friend, neighbor who's dealing with a difficult time? And the answer would be courage. Good question, Tom. Wow. I love it. I'm going to take that with me. Like, here's the question I think you need to ask me, and I'll be on my interviews. I'm going to add that to my interview question list. That's a good one, really. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, indeed. That's right, indeed. Yeah, name of the game, get something new out of every guest. That's right, indeed. That's
You
right,
done
indeed.
it. You done
That's
good.
right. And besides, it'll probably make good content later for a blog post or a book chapter or something. So you never know. That's right,
Darn
indeed.
right. I'm going to add it. Actually, I'm going to add it to my blog, my content list. All right. I'm really writing it down. The single most important characteristic. Well done.
Yeah, you can even write. Funny enough, that actually reminds me of past guests. His actually episode title is Courage. Episode, I think, wow, 42, no less. Had
Okay.
Christy Lindor. She actually talked about courage and the necessity of courage, because the thing was, like, she was the introvert shy girl who really was afraid to ask for what she wanted out of life, and read the
Right.
book A Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes and
Oh, yeah.
transformed her life for the better. So yeah, courage, that
Yep.
is a heavy trait to keep in your arsenal and keep it going.
Yeah.
That's right, indeed.
Yep. Amen. Thank you. Great question.
Ah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, we'll see your reaction to this one. So, if your wonderful book, 100 Acts of Love, if it was a food, what would it be and why?
Um, it would be a bunch of different foods all together. And it's because it has something in there for everybody. The book is divided into chapters. So there's a food chapter with unique ways to help with food. There's a kid chapter, how to help if they have kids. There's a car chapter. There's a random around the house chapter. There's what to do at work chapter. There's what to do if you don't live near them chapter. So it's got a little bit of everything. So maybe it would be a pizza with everything on it, but divided carefully, because maybe you don't like peppers. So you're not going to get the slice with the peppers on it. That's what it would be.
Sweet. There you go. That's right, indeed. That gourmet pizzeria pizza, y'all. That's right, indeed. Different flavors on different slices. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Something for everybody. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So, my goodness, coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive. And that is, if you wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but you're still in the current year with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
Shonda Rhimes, yes. Just say yes to everything. Say yes. Just say yes. Just say yes. I had this idea to build a company. Yes. I want to be bicoastal. Yes. just say yes to everything, and to not take anything, so not take so much personally. It's not anyone's reaction to me is usually actually not always about me. It's really about them and what story they're telling themselves about what I've said. So not take everything so personally. Oh, I'd love to wake up 25 tomorrow with all the knowledge that I have today. Holy hell. I'd be a terror, a good terror.
That's right indeed. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. She's like, yeah, that's right indeed. Second wind, which is really now the first wind again.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. And I would say, make sure you do the knee exercises so you don't need knee surgery when you're in your 50s. So I would say, don't poo-poo those physical therapists and do the damn knee exercises.
Yeah.
So yeah, that comes with wisdom, comes with age. You live and learn, literally.
Oh yeah, you can say that again. You could say that again. It's like, yep, physical therapists, listen to them. The parents, it's like, oh wow, they actually were smarter than we give them credit for. It's like,
Exactly.
every year you get closer, closer. Like, oh, so this is the reason why they were doing these things. All right.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
That's right, indeed. Became bionic woman, and Uncle already came to visit and stayed. Well, speaking of staying, folks need to check out all the stuff that you're doing and keep in contact with you and stay with you on your journey. So, for those need to do just that, what's the best way for folks to do so?
Well, Dom, I'm glad you asked. So I know I talked about what's the worst thing you can say to an employee dealing with cancer or loss, but there are 4 other things that I advise people never to say. And if you'd like to know what those 4 things are, you can go to 100actsoflove.com/what not to say. No capitals, no spaces, what not to say. And it is the number 100actsoflove.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Kim Hamer. I'm on there. I do LinkedIn Lives every single Thursday at 12 noon Pacific time. And you can also find me on Instagram at 100actsoflove.com. And please reach out if you have a question, you're not sure what to say or how to support your employee or friend, DM me and I will have a conversation with you, because it's just it helps me to have people around me who knew how to support me. And you can be that exact same kind of help for not only the person that you care about, but you can help all those other people who don't know what to say and what to do, and share with them the information that I share with you. So please, please, please DM me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Woohoo! Well, there you have it, folks. Slide into Kim's DMs indeed and be like, hey, you're super special. Awesome. That's right, indeed. You're super special. Awesome. Indeed. Enjoyed your interview on Going North, or even the other views they may hear too, and ask some questions. That's right, indeed. And buy some copies of a magical book. That's right, indeed. Bonus points if you're an organization and you buy 100 copies of 100 Acts of Love. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. We want to create a million woman march with these books. That's right, indeed. That's right. That's right, indeed. Stilettos or not, so they can strut their knowledge. That's right. The books, that is.
Yep, absolutely.
That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So, my goodness, any parting words before we close up shop, Kim?
No, just thank you so much, Dom. And I just want people to remember how much they matter. You really do matter to that person who's suffering right now. So please have the courage and show up, because they need you. Thank you.
One of the greatest investments you'll ever make in your lifetime will be using your time, and you did just that. Thanks a bunch for investing your time by listening to this wonderful podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you really did, do me a solid and leave a review or share this episode with at least 3 people that you think would get some value out of today's content. Advance others to advance yourself.